This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV. Yes, I am.
Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review.
One step more. One step more. One step more. Until you reach your goals. One step more. Save them souls. One step more.
This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV. Yes, I am.
Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review.
Be sure to join us next time.
Okay, we're here with Live for Love TV, the 30th day of the third month of 2021. We had a video the other day, which we called We Need to Talk, which dealt with anxiety, depression, mental illness. And I have two young ladies here who have stepped up with the We Need to Talk, they're prepared to talk, which is beautiful. And I think that's going to help you and me and everybody else out. And we got people of three different generations here. So it's my generation, Shamara, who I'm going to bring in on a minute. I think you can see her. Shamara, can you say hi?
Hello.
Wonderful. And Summer, who's a generation down from Shamara. So we got 40 years between myself and Summer. So that's 20 years is a generation. So two generations basically. So I'm going to start off with Summer, if you don't mind. Yeah. And when I put the video out, and a little bit before that, we had a little conversation, and you were saying that you know people who have had so I wouldn't say depressive illnesses, but they've had stressful things like that. And I made, which you thought was a flippant comment when I said, how can somebody your age have any sort of mental distress? And you put me straight then, and you could put me straight again now, because people of my generation can't understand anybody under 20 having any sort of mental or mind or stressful situation. So can you enlighten us?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say to put you straight off the bat is that you said, you said depressed first, and then you swapped to what you said to mental distress. So it's kind of like, I can see your reluctance to describe somebody 17, 18-year-old as depressed.
Right.
But I mean, I think there were people your generation, Shamara's generation, when they were my age, who suffered from depression. But I feel like in your generation, society made it more of a thing where maybe you didn't acknowledge that was depression, or if you did, you just suppressed it. It was a lot more of a suppression culture. And to add to that, my generation, there's different pressures. Every generation has its own pressures. We have the pressure of social media. We're born into a generation where you have a certain social standard you're meant to maintain. You want to get a certain amount of likes on social media. You want to look a certain way because you can see people on your Instagram or your Snapchat, whatever it may be. And then school, it's kind of a proven fact that school and exams and so on are getting progressively harder. There's a bigger emphasis on that and stress on that. As a young person, you worry about financial stress because we know things are getting more expensive as time goes on. Tuition fees are £9,250 a year to go to university. I think about that because I'm going to university this year. I think about how I'm going to pay that back when I get to that point. I think about if I'm going to be able to move out of my mom's house before at the age of 35 because it's so expensive to find your own place. There's just a lot of different pressures that people my generation have to face nowadays that I feel like, and I feel like it's not all generation's fault because every generation does it to the next one, the successor, sorry. They kind of downplay those pressures, but they're very much real. Like social media, a lot of people unfortunately take their lives because they feel they've had certain comments on social media, they're not fulfilling a certain life that they feel like they need to fulfill. Like everybody that's 20 now feels like if they don't have £1 million in the name and a nice car, they're failing at life because of how social media and society portrays that they should be living. So I feel like it's very possible for people to be depressed at this age. I know people that have suffered with depression at this age. I've never been depressed, but I've definitely had mental distress and a lot of stress at my age. And yeah, it's very much a possibility.
Thank you. Very, very well put. I like that. But some things are going to come back at you, though, about some of the things you said. I want to pick a little bit of an issue with some of the things you said. But I'm going to go straight over to Shamara. Welcome, Shamara. I'm going to say welcome again. And can you give me something from your generation? Because your generation is the one down from mine. That sounded, and I'm sure anybody of my generation is going to say to myself, the first thing they're going to think is themselves with what Summer said was, why would a young person, because she was looking forward so far, 30, will I be able to leave home at 35? And it was like, I'm saying to myself, but that's way down the road. How does that become a stress? So, I mean, from your generation, what do you say about not just what she said, but what you feel and what you know?
So at my age, I would say I'm kind of halfway in between, right? So
Can I ask you how old you are? Because I know I'm not supposed to ask a lady how old she is. Do you want to give me a range of your age?
yeah, I'm 33. I'm 33. I'm fine to say that.
Right, okay.
Remember at my age now, a lot of us are parents like yourself.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with, we've got careers as well, financial stresses, just like someone was talking about property stresses. A lot of my age group still not on the property ladder, trying to get onto the property ladder
A
in their
lot of people my
30s.
age group are not on a property ladder, so be careful with that one. Because I'm
Well,
saying that you're same thing someone was doing. That's what I'm going to pick some issues with her. Sorry to interrupt you, but you're putting some of the things that she was saying is what you're now reiterating, as if something is owed to your generation, and because you're saying they're not on a property ladder for hundreds of years. I mean, before 1980s, when Margaret Thatcher came in and started giving people the right to buy, people never even considered being on the property ladder. There was lots of people, thousands, if not hundreds, thousands of people never got on a property ladder.
okay. Well, what I would say, I don't want to be too specific because I don't have the stats on it. But my feeling would be there would be a lot more people in your generation on the property ladder than mine,
Yeah.
purely due to property prices at the time when a lot of you would have been looking to get onto the property ladder. We're kind of at a place where I can count on one hand the amount of my friends that have been able to do it because the property prices, particularly in London where I live, are impossible now. The amount that you'd need to earn, or even, you'd need to be doing it with somebody else to be able to even get a look in. So as I said, I feel like we're in a middle generation. We're adults with families of our own, those same sort of financial pressures. But as Summer said, we're kind of in that middle ground with the social media age as well. Like we remember a time before social media, but we're not so far past it that we're not interested in it. So as Summer said again, there are a lot of pressures that come with social media, pressures to look a certain way, pressures to portray your life as though it's going a certain way. So I think we've got a middle ground, and we get a little bit of each at my age.
Okay. Let me get back to Summer now. So Summer, from what Shamara just said there, the first thing comes to mind is a lot of the pressures you talked about are external pressures. Yeah, external pressures from society and the way you look at life. But could I look at that? Could I play devil's advocate and say then that you're putting a lot of these pressures on yourselves? It's not just society's putting it on you. You're just saying Samara said, pressures of the way you have to look. But that's not pressure to me. I don't see where that's a pressure, how you have to look. I mean, you look how you want to look. And if you don't look the way other people think that you should look, that shouldn't become a pressure to you, should it?
I mean, I think it's easier to say, and I always say this thing to people: you have in theory and you have in practice. In theory, we all know we shouldn't be bothered by what other people say about how we look. In practice, we're humans. When people judge us, we feel a certain way about it. That's how it goes. My generation has the normal human reaction to judgment, and then it's about tenfold, it's times 100, because we then have social media at the top of it. And with social media, what you need to understand is, okay, you may only have 200 followers. If your account's public, for example, that is open to thousands, millions of people to see. Everybody can see what you put out there on social media. People will judge you, and I think it is a human reaction to possibly be upset or hurt if somebody judges you in a negative way. Like, that's how people react to judgment, especially if it's negative. And like, going back to what you were saying before, you feel like a lot of the problems myself and Shamara are mentioning are like far ahead of us. But what you have to understand is, again, for our generation, social media in particular has made these problems kind of come forward. So, okay, I may not have to buy a car or buy a house for another, 5 to 10, 20 years. But the way social media portrays certain things, it's that you need to make sure by 21, you've moved out of your house, you've done this, you've done that. So social media makes these problems more of an imminent issue than it may actually be. And I feel like your generation not having social media, if you didn't live a certain way by a certain time, the only people that are going to judge you are maybe your family and your friends. for our generation, you have your family, your friends, and then the thousands of other people that are out there in the world to judge you. I mean, I'm talking a bit outside of it in a way because I personally would say I'm less impacted by social media than other people, but I'm an anomaly in my generation. Most people are very much impacted by it.
Yeah,
So yeah, I would.
I appreciate you putting that point for people of your generation. That's really the reason why I want you to have a conversation with you and with Shamara. It's not just necessarily just what you're feeling, but you actually are like I am. I'm a bit of a representative of my own generation, and I would say this: that we did have mental pressures in our time, and they weren't acknowledged, I suppose, by our people. We did a lot of drinking and smoking in our day. I know you guys do that too, I know, but maybe we had a lot more mental issues than people would admit, and they've come down onto some of your generations. I think people have pushed their emotional problems onto their children without realizing it and trying to hide behind things. But I mean, I still feel that in the cold light of day, with what you're saying, we need to teach our young. I would need to teach you, and Shamara needs to teach her young, and whatever. We have to teach our young people how to stand up to society, stand up to people around them, to feel self-confident. There has to be because what you're saying is that the pressures of all these people are putting on you, not just family and friends, but the other 100 people out there. But somewhere along the line, there has to be a pushback, yes?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And again, I think everyone in my generation would agree. But the issue is people above us and people that are meant to be leading the way, like the vanguards, do not take the issue that seriously. So, okay, maybe you're quite receptive to what I'm saying now, but most people in your generation, if I was to tell them people are killing themselves over the way they are perceived on social media, they would just be like, what are you talking about? So no one's there to actually teach my generation and tomorrow's generation, no, stand up for yourself. You shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't this, that, and the other. People don't take it seriously. They kind of play it off. So you're right in what you're saying, but people are not actually putting those things into practice.
And you, Shamara, what do you think? What do you say to that?
I would agree with that. It almost feels like, and no disrespect at all to your generation, but I don't think social media plays the same part in your generation's life in the same way, particularly for Summer's generation. They live by it, like literally across all the different platforms, they live by it. So maybe there is a slightly non-understanding, of those pressures.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've always tried to do a lot of studying. Yeah, one of the reasons I tried to study quite a lot of stuff and go general right across the board was I was always concerned that things will come in, whether it could be some new religion, new philosophy, new something. One of my children would say, "Oh, I'm going to be this tomorrow. I'm going to do that tomorrow." And I thought if I knew enough, I could say, "Oh, but what about this part of it?" And they may, then they'd realize, "Oh, Dad knows something about, this thing. It's not just something new they're bringing to me." Now, I think this is where the social media has caught us, as they say, with our pants down, because most of us, before social media became a major thing, we were already men and women. We're in our 30s, and it hadn't become a thing yet. We heard of it, but it hadn't become a thing yet. And so by the time it's become a thing, it's in your generation, Shamara, and it's a total thing in Summer's generation. By the time it's become, we haven't realized that something that we saw as so innocent could impact life so severely. Because what you're saying is an eye opener to me. I mean, I'm hearing things on the networks, but it's opening my eyes and saying to myself, "Wow." So if this thing was become such a powerful thing, then my generation has got caught out. We've been completely caught out because we should have been there learning it even before you learned it, so that we knew we'd have been able to see some of these things happening.
I mean, I would say to that, I don't think anybody realized how big social media was going to get, to be fair, when it first came about. It was the odd little thing, and then Facebook, and then before you know it, you've got Instagram, Snapchat, and whatever else is out there now. I don't think anybody was aware of it. But just to backtrack on what Summer said there earlier as well about people committing suicide over things that have been said to them on social media. Equally, there have been deaths, stabbings and things based on arguments, beefs that have happened and have escalated on things like Snapchat. back and forth, and again, I'm not saying that those social media causes it, but it's just something that just shines. It's like a magnifying glass. It just amplifies any little thing into such a major thing. And again, I'm not sure how much your generation would realize that.
Well, I mean, you're right. It's been exacerbated by anything that happens, exacerbated by social media. You're 100% right. I mean, I've said to you before off air that I think social media, I think the internet is one of the greatest inventions that I've seen since I've been alive. But that's because I use it positively. That's because I can see what it can do. I've been in places in the world where you can't get books to read, and I've used it as a way of learning how to read stuff and be like a library to me, like I'm in the British Library or something. So, but it's like anything. It's like fire. You use it to cook. You use it to keep yourself warm, or you can use it to throw and burn somebody's house down. So there is nothing that's invented that I've ever heard of that can be used only for positive. There's always a negative side to it. And what we're talking about really right now with social media, and because we're talking about mental illness and distress, we're talking about the negative side that it plays in people's lives, especially in the younger people's lives. As you said, younger people. Your generation is getting it quite heavily, but Summer's generation, I mean, they're snowed under by it. And what's frightening is they can't keep off it. I mean, it's if you take their laptops or phones away for a minute, you see them start twitching, literally. And it's just frightening. But I mean, somebody can come back at me with that.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to just talk about myself as an individual case. Most people would be like that. Like, I mean, even if I'm talking about myself, I use Instagram every day. I use Snapchat every day to communicate with people mainly, but I use it just to like see what other people are doing with their lives, see people that I like or musicians and so on. Like, we're on that all the time. And obviously there's a time before.
Are we too interested in other people's lives?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. People are way too interested in other people's life. People are breaking up on social media, and thousands of people are in the comments saying, "Wonder what happened. They need to come out and tell us this." Like, that's how people. I think again, I don't think that's a social media problem. I actually feel like part of it is in human nature. Like, I do think there is like a natural community instinct, but I do feel like social media has made we have a lot of access to a lot of people's lives, and that access means people can demand a certain, like, you need to tell me what's going on here, you need to tell me that. And yeah, people are too interested in a way, but again, social media, like you were saying earlier, has put a magnifying glass on it, because let's look at something completely different. Let's look at maybe beef, as people would say, disputes and so on. In your generation, if you had a problem with somebody, you guys would maybe settle it there and then, it would be done. Now, if I had a problem with somebody my age, I got in a fight with them or something, somebody else might film that fight, and then all over social media they're saying, "Oh, look at this person, they got beat up by someone, they got embarrassed by someone." Now it's a bigger problem. Now it's pride and ego, and everybody's seen this happen to me. Now that person feels like they have to retaliate. So social media is not just causing issues in terms of mental health and so on, it's causing issues in terms of violence. And I think, well, that's a big part of why we're seeing more people like that's getting stabbed, gang violence, so on. I feel like that's a big thing. But
I think that is what's making people even more mentally distressed and ill.
Well, what I was gonna say about the mental health, sorry to cut you, mental health aspect was, I think what people need to remember, or maybe if they don't remember, need to understand, psychopathological illnesses like depression come from a thought process. They don't come from maybe specifically social media or certain event. When you have depression, for example, it's because you have a faulty negative thought process, and you have a faulty way of thinking. You have absolutist thinking, and you think about everything glass half empty look. Then what will happen is that is kind of triggered by some sort of environmental situations or something's happened. So kind of the thought that being a young person, it's easy to not be depressed, or you shouldn't be depressed. Well, no, everybody has a mind, everybody has thoughts, everybody has brain. If everybody has these things, then I don't see why it's so unfathomable to understand that a person my age could be triggered by some sort of environmental aspect. Social media is part of the environment. These are all external influences and factors that triggers their faulty thought process and makes them think negatively, and they end up depressed. But I feel like a lot of people feel like if you haven't got the specific issues of paying bills, having a job, being a parent, having family life, it doesn't make sense for you to be depressed. But
that's what we had.
Anything can trigger it. All depression needs is an activating event. Like it needs an event that triggers that. But that could be anything for you. It's a subjective thing. So I think people of all ages, my age, Shamara's age, even below that, I've had people that are in their 20s say, how could someone your age be depressed? Everybody needs to understand that anybody can suffer from mental health. And if you understand that, I feel like we make a better step to helping people with those issues.
Yeah,
Just to piggyback off, sorry to jump in, just to piggyback off that as well, we must remember that sometimes people are going through things at home. You know, it's not just these obvious things like social media and stuff. There are bad home environments that can happen to someone at any age, you know, from a child. So how can you ask, how can you be depressed or have some mental health issue? You could have it at 5, 10 because of what you're seeing in your house. You know, as someone said, it's not.
Those are things that someone my generation would understand. That was what I think someone was saying. Yeah, I agree. Major trauma situations, maybe families fighting, you know, sexual traumas. We can recognize that, but we're not actually talking about that now. We're talking about mental illnesses when there's no obvious trauma. I'm talking about obvious, I mean, if you know the type of let's use the word right with beatings that some of my generation went through. Yeah, I mean, my generation, we don't touch children. Yeah, most of us don't really put their hands on their children. Most of our generation. Well, I'm saying most. I'm speaking.
I don't think it's most. Can I just say? Let's not mislead the people.
Is that what you think most of my generation beat their children, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I do. I think so.
Yeah, because
I do.
Most of my friends, I never received beatings growing up, right? But most of my friends did and could attest to being hit with slippers, items, you know what I mean, in their house. So I really would beg to differ on that one, specifically in certain communities as well.
Well, again, that shows you. Remember, we're not. You see, this is also good when young people come out and speak. This is why I'm so happy we're having this conversation, because remember, that's my generation you're talking about. But no one's going to tell me that they had to put their hand on their child last night, you know. But the child will tell their friend in school, or they'll tell somebody else. So these are things why I'm so happy that we're speaking across the generation gap, you know, because Bob Marley saying in one drop, you could feel the generation gap, and there is a gap there. I mean, I'm hearing this. I didn't know that, but we took, in my generation, beating was almost like a sport. I mean, it was seriously. I don't know. Sometimes you used to wonder if your parents did it just to keep warm. You know, it was that much that used to go on. And I mean, you just, it just was unhidden. It was just the way things were done in the community those times. So I can see that some people would have traumas, and we saw it. Some people got so badly traumatized by their parents that their mental state was pretty bad. But we had no one to talk to. We didn't have any. I don't know about Childline came by the time we were already adults, so I don't know about that. But we didn't have anybody to talk to, so it wasn't a thing for us. And I'm gonna pick up on Summer. Summer's making these great points. You know, she's saying that, well, a person's got a brain, and that therefore they can get depressed. And my problem was that it wasn't. We always saw depression as something that took a long time to happen, and we always saw depression as something that happened with the more you got into that serious condition, like leaving home and stuff. The things you're saying that you can get depressed over, remember, we're talking about social media as one of the main things, never even existed in our time. I mean, let me just put this into perspective. If somebody in my time was on the phone, the only phone in the house, that was it. You just go to your bed because you're not getting on the phone again. So with you guys have all got your own phone, your own WhatsApp, your own Twitter, your own this. So messages are coming at you all the time, you know. But I think someone make great points, Shamari, you're making great points. But if you listen to me a little bit on this one and say, if we got through life without social media, then is it not possible that you guys can get through without social media?
Well, what you're not understand. Well, I mean, yeah, sure, but these are all kind of ifs and buts. Sorry, messages came on my screen. It's all ifs and buts for one, but two, like maybe for Shamara's generation, it would be easier to transition out of that. And a few people from my generation, it might be, but like as soon as a lot of people my generation got phones, they were able to access social media. Like I came on social media late in comparison to my friends. Some of my friends had Facebook when they were like 10 years old. Like they were in year 5 and they had access to Facebook.
But you
It's a
understand? You
completely
understand?
different.
You understand when I said live without social media? I didn't
Of
mean.
course, but if it's
I
ingrained in
didn't mean.
people, it's
No, hold on a
almost
minute.
like,
Hold on a minute. I
yeah,
didn't. Sorry, I didn't mean that you don't use it, but I mean you. It doesn't become the all in all that you're taking.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but if it's ingrained in people, like social media, I'm gonna keep it real. It's like food and water for people my
Oh
generation. The
dear.
first
Yeah.
thing that they do when they wake
It
up,
is.
I'm not gonna lie. The
It
first
is.
thing I do when I wake up is I go on my phone. I'm gonna be raw. I check my messages, who texted me. At some point in the day, I'm gonna see what I missed on my Instagram feed. Like this is part of our everyday life. Social
This
media,
is what I'm trying
like
to
people
say.
have to
It's like
announce. Yeah, sorry, people
the
have to.
unlearning. It's
Yeah,
it's not the same as for mine or for yours, for Summers. It's like they would have to unlearn something because it's always pretty much been there for them.
They can be
yeah.
done though.
It came in at a
Of
certain
course,
point.
anything
I
can be
remember
done though.
time before, but yeah, but a whole generation is not gonna unlearn these habits. A whole
Exactly.
generation, that's a big ask. It's not
No,
gonna happen.
we're gonna lose a lot of people. There's no doubt about that. Let's be real. We're gonna lose a lot of people to social media. You're already telling us about some of the people we're losing already, and we're gonna lose a lot more people to it because it's from what you're saying, it's a reality. Just like we're losing a lot of people to violence on the streets, we are gonna lose people. We're gonna try and make sure that we have these kind of conversations and be real with one another so that we don't lose more than we have to. But we have to accept that some people are going to get drawn into these things and they're not going to listen. Just like how when you have drugs, some people are going to take drugs and they're going to be on them, and no matter what you say, they're just not going to come off until it's too late. I like the points you two are making. I think you have to remember. I may sound like I'm a little bit defensive when you're talking, but that's simply because you're taking me into some waters that I don't have anything to do with. I remember, as I said to you already, just imagine you're 30, you're 35 years old, you've got your children, you've grown up, you've got your place to live, you've gone around the world before social media has even become a thing. And you know, my parents, I mean, you don't even talk to them about a phone with stuff on it. I mean, they can just about know which way is up on a mobile phone. So you have to understand every generation has got to somehow come back into where you are and hear what you're saying. And remember, a lot of us are not talking to your generation, to our children, and saying to them what's happening to you, what's really going on down there. And I'd like to say to Summer, especially to Summer, because she's the younger one, and you said she's engrossed in it. I would like to say that yes, it's like food and water, but it's not food and water. And I know you know that. And I'd like to say to you that at some point you're going to have to pull back from social media. No matter how much it's part of your environment, you're going to have to, because nothing done to that degree is healthy. It doesn't matter what it is. Nothing done that much is healthy.
People identify that, but I honestly, it's gonna sound like a crazy comparison, but like I think alcoholics, and I think alcoholics know that drinking so much alcohol is bad for them, but they get to a point where they're dependent on it and they are addicted. I'm personally, I'm not, and I feel like I could survive without social media. But I mean, a lot of people in my generation are addicted to it. Like I said, it's the first thing they do in the morning and the last thing they do at night is check in their social media. Like, it's an addiction, and people do know that, you know, it's not good to always be seeing things on social media, always seeing all the crazy stuff that's going on, but it's part of people's lives. It's like an alcoholic, it's like somebody who smokes excessively. All these people are aware of their problems and the addictions. Like, they wouldn't actually be said to be addicted if they weren't aware of what was going on with them. They know what's going on, but they can't stop it, and I feel like that's the issue that exists with social media.
Well, I'd like hold on, Shamara. 1 second, Shamara. I'd like to say that was wonderfully put, and I think we're gonna have to come back at this as a part two. There's absolutely no doubt about this. We're coming close to the end. I'm gonna let Shamara have the last word on what Summer just said, and I mean, you talking to both of you, you're blowing my mind. I'm not joking. I'm not playing. You're blowing my mind with the realities of what's going on. But Shamara, give us the last word on Live for Love TV.
Well, I actually have a question for you on something that you just said to me, which was, you know, for your generation who was 30, 35 plus before social media really came to the forefront, even though that may be the case, the fact that it's in your children's lives and potentially your grandchildren's lives, is it not a responsibility of you your generation to still monitor and have some understanding of it, if that's the world that your children, stroke grandchildren, are going to be living in?
Yeah, I'll answer that very quickly. The answer to that is yes, the short answer, but the long answer is a little bit more complicated, because by the time you're 35 in my generation, you've got a family, you've done so many things, you've lived a certain life, and so you're knee deep in everything you're in. You're knee deep. So when something comes in like this, you don't know that it's going to be what you. Because remember, I've known about social media for years, but I didn't know even to today the impact it's having on you and the generation behind you. So I'm saying to you that it's a responsibility for us to get to know it. But believe me, I'm telling you, people in my generation, they can just about cope with their day to day. Most of them can cope with their day to day. If you give them something else and say, well, now you've got to go on social media and find out what's going on and learn about that, that could be the end of them. We have to be real about these things. And the same is going to happen to you, Shamara, as you've got a child and stuff like that. As you get older, so much other stuff comes up, stuff, and it seems more important. You try to prioritize other things. You think, well, social media, you see that your children, they see them on a computer. You don't know. You think they're having fun and they're just, enjoy. You don't know the dangers that what you're saying that can be happening with them. So you're right, but I think you have to understand it's a lot easier said than done to try and expect people in their 50s and 60s to now take social media so seriously after they themselves are struggling with their own day-to-day lives. But I mean, I think that point is well made. I'm telling you, we're going to come back at this, Summer. We're going to come back at this. I'd like to thank both of you for coming on Live for Love TV and being so open, so candid. I'm proud of you. Yeah, I'm proud of you that you're able to, make your points, not just for yourself, but for your generation. I'm telling you, it's going to make a difference because I can feel it. It's made a difference with me. I'm sure it's going to make a difference with adults as well. And, you're going to be welcome back on Live for Love TV at any time. So I'd like to say thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you.
This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV. Yes,
Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review.
Be sure to join us next time.
Live for Love TV.